It's the Justin Palmer Show. Here we go. Woo!
AJ Rayasam, we're doing it again.
What's up, my man?
So as you were preparing that man bun for this episode, you just reminded me of that time that you came to stay with us in New York and you had like a hair straightener or something for your beard.
Oh, yeah.
That I had never seen one of those before.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this dude is next level.
It is. I used to get so many compliments on my beard because it was rowdy.
Yeah.
And they get unruly after a certain length. And I discovered a little trick. And I got this tiny little hair straightener from Amazon, like a one of those hot iron straighteners, but it's like as big as a pair of scissors or something. And I used to run it through my beard and it would just straighten it out and it would look hard.
Yeah.
And people would literally stop me on the road and be, obviously dudes stop me on the road and be like, man, your beard looks incredible. And some people would even say, what's your secret? And I would say, honestly, go get this little straightener. Because it would just, for some reason, it doesn't grow that length anymore. After I cut it.
Really?
But I just haven't. Also, it takes some dedication. It takes like 6 months to get to that point.
I'm getting close.
Yeah, not that I don't have that time, but also it's fairly unruly, because if you don't do all of that and you don't put it all together, it's just a mess. But with the Zoom era of being on video calls often, a beard like that, it's hard to tell what people have said that it's hard to tell what you're saying because your mouth is all covered up with your beard.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
just listen.
Yeah, that's true. maybe that's a sign to shut the fuck up, huh?
Yeah. Just listen. That was a regal beard. I remember that era. It was.
Yeah, those are good days.
Yeah. All right.
How's it going with you? Hawaii life? You definitely definitely got your castaway look going on.
Yeah, bro. I haven't had a haircut or shaved since I trimmed up like under my neck a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I shaved my beard once when we got out here, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm letting it go. I haven't had a haircut since before I left New York.
Are you using any beard products?
No,
what's your thought about all that?
I just, look, I get it why people do that. I use Hawaiian seawater, and I do a little bit of this, I go like this when I'm in the ocean, a little bit of seaweed, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't wait to get back out there.
I'm so excited for you guys to come. Anna's already planning and like nesting for you guys to come visit.
What's the schedule over there? Opening and all of that? Are you guys?
It's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird still. I stopped. The mayor published like a 4-page grid of like the phase by phase yeses and nos, and I got through the first page and I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I'm not reading. Look, I'll wear a mask when I go into the stores. Obviously, a lot of things are still closed. I feel for the business owners. I ran into a guy who runs a athletic facility. I'm not going to say which one it is, but he runs an athletic facility. I ran into him in the water the other day, and he's fucking struggling, man. He doesn't want to renegotiate. He's not that type of guy, and he's just hanging on by a thread because it's looking like January is probably realistic for gyms at this point. The cases here are minuscule, right? My kids are in school, and I'm very thankful for that because this wouldn't get recorded at the time that it gets recorded if they weren't.
There are some strange separation of rules, and I don't know if this is just in California, but it's hard to not feel like they're picking who should win and who shouldn't. I mean, we went the other day on one block in Oakland, and we went to a bread store, bakery. We went to a butcher that's next door. There's a wine shop that we went to that's a retail establishment. Mm-hmm. And and to the grocery store that's on the corner, which has an open farmer's market on the sidewalk. And then there's a restaurant there that could not let a single person walk through the door. So it's like, so all these other places can be open, but this restaurant can't. And a couple of weeks back, we visited a winery that's here in the Bay Area. They had full tables set up, tables of 6 allowed. And we were inside, but restaurants can't do that. So the real question is, but if that winery then served food, they would have to close. And but if you don't serve food, then sure, how come have a seat at my table? And then, you know, schools are still closed here, but you can open. Gyms are now open inside, and so are camps. So if you format your education in the format of like a summer camp, that can be open. And there's some weird distinctions that are there. But as soon as you start teaching something in that camp, then you'll have to close as a school. It's just like at some point you got to start throwing some questions around, like who's making up these rules? Oh yeah, and you know, and what's the point there? And I get that schools are a big transmission vector, but you know, when it comes to dine-in restaurants and you know, literally everything else, including, you know, you can go to any like clothing store and buy just retail garbage, but you can't go out to dinner and sit inside of a restaurant. And I'm not sure that there's any specific data that supports that restaurants are somehow like highly infectious places to be. If there is, I guess, you know, maybe there's some logic to that, but you know, as you know, having done a lot of business in California, logic is not always the number one thing that's leading the political agenda around here. Yeah. So
I think that's true for almost everywhere right now, except for the states that are fully open and giving people the choice. Hey, hang on 1 second. I just want to turn off this fan.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
I usually remember to turn that off, but it creates a little bit extra noise. I don't want people to have to listen to a hum, if anybody's even listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah, so that whole California system, politics and all of that, it's one of the things that's like, you know, prompted us to the conclusion that, you know, California probably isn't for us. The people that are here, you know, they love it. It's like a religion to be in California. But then, you know, we're, I think, a little bit closer to like Joe Rogan or Elon Musk on this, that says, okay, look, we had a good run, but California is against us as business owners and as middle class entrepreneurs. And so we you know, at some point it's just, you know, unless you're delusional, why would you in middle class America want to be in California and put up with this? And I don't mean specifically about the closures, because, you know, if it's justified, great. I'm not a social engineer when it comes to virology, but at some point, just with the crime, the homelessness, the taxation, the fires, it's hotter than hell. I mean, it was 105 for like a good part of the end of the summer plus. And then taxes on everything, the 50 cent per gallon gas tax, and just taxes out the ass. And it's just, how long, you know, which is fine. I'm fine paying taxes, even half of my income. You know, if there was a decent school that we could go to and that crime was under control and that there weren't needles in every single place and tents in every public park, and that the people that were making the most were paying the most, which is obviously not true either. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at some point, unless you're just flat out like got a love affair with the state of California for one reason or the other, you know, it's starting to look like there's not much of a redeeming situation if you and your family can pick up and move elsewhere. That it is almost, you know, it's just so sensible to do that now that we're jumping on that that boat, the Leave California boat. So, and a lot of this is just, I think, a history of just making some politically questionable decisions. And I guess that brings up, like, what are your thoughts? Because, you know, we're politically coming from diametric poles. Like, you've been traditionally more conservative, I guess. And I'm from Austin, so a little bit, I don't know where I've been, to be honest.
I would identify with I don't know where I've been. We should start a new party called I don't know where I've been.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I grew up, my mom is a total hippie, very, very, very liberal. And I grew up in Olympia, Washington, which is where like Brett Weinstein, the college professor that got like kicked out of Evergreen State College. Evergreen State College is like no grades, no major. They've been growing weeds since like the 1960s.
Why did he get kicked out?
Because like basically he was saying that education is not racist or something. I don't even know all the details. Don't quote anything about this, but he was, I don't know. There was some student movement, like this was like early protests before years ago. And he just got basically like booted. Like as a tenured professor, he got ousted, him and his wife. But it's a very liberal town. And I also grew up without a lot of economic means. And so I've never identified with I've always registered as independent. And I've always found it extremely hard to vote from the standpoint that I don't really know any of these people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, there's no way to get to know them. And I have some mosh pit of ideas that kind of flow with me, but I'm not tied to any of them. And as I've gotten, I guess, more older or mature, as like having kids, I agree with you. It's like, I don't mind paying taxes as long as they're straightforward and they're going into the community that I'm in. And that was my biggest problem with New York, was that I'm paying a lot in taxes and I'm not using any of the infrastructure. I'm not using the public school system. I'm not even using public transit because I designed my life to just be able to walk everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, if you are in the middle class, like you said, where you can work remotely, even part of the time. I mean, I've met people on planes pre-COVID who lived in like Albuquerque and their job was in San Francisco and they would commute once a month for like 3 days. Right? And then the rest of the time they would telecommute. And this isn't some new thing, but now it's socially accepted, which is a good thing. Right? Because I think people can improve the quality of their lives just by moving.
Yeah. And it's, the other part is that California, we thought by getting here into the liberal bubble would actually drag us into more of a liberal stance on a number of positions, but it did the opposite. So, because when we're here and witnessing sort of the far liberal, personalities that are around us and how aggressive they are at voicing that opinion. Not to be just a pointless contrarian, but following suit because those are the people that are around you is not really our style. It's definitely not my style. So if anything, it prompted a sense of like rethinking all of that stuff, and it did kind of the opposite effect. Where now I think we have a lot more conservative, maybe it's just also a function of getting older, a lot more of a conservative point of view than a lot of the people that are around here. That's another part of why I don't think that we sync with California, not just some of this policy, but just the general, opinions, the liberal opinions of the people around here about certain issues, I think is just, I'm in total disagreement. So to the point where like, I would be open to having some discussion or middle ground, but it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like a young liberal is. You know what I mean? It's not. I've had literally a discussion with the millennial about transgenders in sports, and I've been a competitive athlete. So in that situation, I am not sure I agree with, allowing transgender to specifically in the scenario of a post-op male that's competing against women in sports like in power or combat sports or explosive sports. There is an intrinsic advantage there, right? If you put a trans person who now identifies as a woman into a power sport, they're going to steamroll a natural woman. And I don't think that's fair for women who have worked their whole life to be amazing at a one particular sport and then have to deal with that kind of competition. So, and that kind of dialogue around here will, get me banned from public places. So, and the people that are saying that, they're not competitive athletes, So, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I'm open to, if you have a system that works here, I'm not like completely closed-minded on this. If you have a system that works here to get people who are trans involved in competitive athletics in a way that makes it sensible and fair, I'm open to that kind of a discussion. But the alternative is like, no, you're an asshole and you're biased and, you've got all these judgments and that there's no discussion there. It just immediately, this brick wall of judgment. So then the discussion doesn't even occur. And I was having this conversation with with a friend of mine who is of that liberal type, Berkeley master's graduate in public health and safety. So that she's really on the edge of this.
Oh boy.
And we had this discussion, and I listened to her point of view, and I said, okay, well, thanks for sharing that. I learned something today, and I appreciate you discussing with it. And normally I kind of put that out there because the courtesy on the flip end was like, well, thank you for that discussion. I learned something too as well. No, I said, thank you for that. I learned something out of this conversation. And her response is, well, you're welcome. I'm glad that I could have educated you. And I'm like, dude, okay, well,
yeah.
It's just, and that to me demonstrates something dangerous about that, like, social justice warrior, super liberal point of view is that I'm right. It's having the opinion that I'm right.
Yeah.
That in itself is a dangerous perspective to have. That to be convinced that your opinion is so correct that you're not that open to any discussion, argument, or a contrarian point of view about it, and that the people that are in disagreement with you are just flat out misinformed, and that's why they disagree. I think that is a dangerous point of view to carry on any debate of which there's gray areas. To say that, hey, I know that this is an extremely complex issue with a number of opinions that can span an entire spectrum, including a bunch of things in the middle that can't be categorized as something that's right or wrong. But what I'm positive about is that I'm right, and if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. That is fucking weird. But that to a large degree is the summary of how, like, social points of view are built, that I have found unique to California. I mean, I'm sure it happens elsewhere, but I found it unique to California. So
I think California is like the mecca of it, right? It just has like another level of it where a lot of this stuff originates. And that, by the way, that's a fucking super dangerous way to live your life.
Isn't it?
Super dangerous.
Yeah.
And I've done it like for a long time in my late 20s, early 30s. I wasn't a zealot in anything, but I was trying to be right. And you get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Nothing. It actually pulls you down into this like negative space.
Yeah. Yeah. And you nailed it on the head, which is trying to be right. And it's much more of an ego thing rather than it is the seeking to understand and having an opinion is not even necessary. right? It's only necessary if you can use that opinion to demonstrate that you're somehow right, so you can feel better about yourself. It's because in certain areas like this, there is no right and wrong. And to me, I err, let's just take that example, like transgenders in sports. I err on the side of that athletic competition should be as fair as possible. And there's people that have natural advantages over the others, over other people, but you have to draw a line somewhere to create an advantage. You can't have, people in a boxing ring and just have that, like, men and women against boxing ring. Like, women would just never compete there. And the real dangerous part of that is that, let's say you have, people in, that are trans that enter into something like, something like powerlifting or weightlifting in general, and they crush all the existing women, which they will if that happens.
Sure. Yeah, it's biology.
And for sure, yeah. And let's say if you do that, then what ends up happening is that young girls that are 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, aspiring weightlifters that are maybe at even the top of their game, they'll get incredibly discouraged at the fact that because they're not trans and that they were born formerly men, that they have no ability to compete in the real world at that sport. And so in some of the pursuit of, like, if you're like the top 100 of any sport, you really have a shot of being the best person at that sport. What separates, I think, the top 100 are just so minute, like all the way down to what you ate for breakfast the day that you had your biggest lift. They're just minute variables that are there. And to think that if you're a part of that group of 100 and knowing that you'll never be first, because you have a disadvantage to other people that are in your category that you can never overcome, and that there is no way for you to be first as a natural woman if trans women are competing in your field. Then if you're 12 and if you have a shot, I think that's an incredibly discouraging place to be. So, that's kind of one of the things I think about when I think, well, what is this? I don't have an answer for what it should look like.
It's so simple. Just create an open fucking league, right? Create an open division. Like, that's it. Problem solved. Create an open division. Stop trying to fucking compete in, like, it's like me trying to go into the women's bathroom, right? It's like, people would freak out, right? It's not appropriate in a social context.
Right.
So just these things, I think people get up in arms and stuff like this. And this is a reflection of what's happening in our culture. I was talking to Dr. Jeff, who was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, yesterday. And I was like, dude, America we're just at the fucking roulette table. We've got too much money. We're a spoiled fucking brat. And we're just at the roulette table, and we need to start, like, peeling back the layers and stop fucking around and focusing on things that just don't matter. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by that?
What do
you mean by at the roulette table?
Like, as a culture, the consciousness of people is very low. We focus on these, like, very lowly things. If you choose, not everyone, I'm obviously generalizing, but I think as a culture, America's focused on the material thing. What can I get out of this? It's a very egotistical culture, including even what you just described. Is like,
you don't think that most people are just worried about, like, how to eat and stuff like that?
Dude, yeah, fuck no. Even the people that are in, and I've been below the poverty line many times in my life. You're not struggling in the way you've been to India, dude. Mm-hmm. You're not struggling for clean water, except for Flint, Michigan. There are exceptions, of course, always.
Sure.
By and large, you can go into any American city, drink water from the tap, and you will never have to even think about it. Mm-hmm. Right? You'll never have to think about malaria or disease or anything like that. You can go get food. You can go get help. You can go get food stamps. You can go, this country has a lot. to offer. And I think
compared to a place like India, I mean,
but that's the other spectrum of the human existence. And we're so out of touch with that for some reason. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we're all just focusing on ourselves, which you need to do at some level to take care of yourself, take care of your family, right? There's a balance to it. Just like anything, you got to ride in that center where you're balanced.
Yeah.
And you have to put the needs of your family in line with you. And it's a real challenge. But I think what I mean by being at the roulette table is like, we're gambling on house money. It's all just fun. Everybody just wants to have fun. Everybody just wants to fuck around. Nobody wants to work hard. Nobody wants to fucking actually earn something. They just want it, and they want it now. And they're willing to risk everything just because it's house money, you know?
Yeah. Immediate gratification.
Yeah. And there's like a sense of entitlement around it. And you don't have to make work the focus of your life. If that's just like some people want to be power lifters. Some people, we were talking before the show, like everybody's body is different, and that's okay. Some people are built to power lift. Some people are built to run. Some people are built to just fucking walk.
I think this is a part of the YouTube millionaire idea that somebody kind of clued me in on this, where we, Gen X, Gen Y, kind of grew up from this mentality that the harder you work, the more that you'll get. And, you know, obviously we've been programmed into the very capitalistic system of the more that you get means that you'll be happy, which is not true. But there's definitely a sense of, hey, if I'm going to get what I want, I need to work, and I need to work hard. And I think that there's something about this YouTube millionaire kind of sensation, that there's this new thought that the people that are working hard are the suckers that are out there. And because you can get what you want without having to do all of that. And including financially, because look at what little I did, and I have this completely autonomous passive income dropshipping business that you should try for yourself, and I just get $20,000 a month in the mailbox for doing nothing, which is complete bullshit, by the way.
I don't know anything about this, by the way.
You don't know. I'm getting, because we're in that business, I get inundated with the ads of these guys that are like totally passive income by dropshipping. It's total bullshit. But I could not emphasize more for anybody who listens to this that if you think that you can just create money by doing some nonsense dropshipping, Amazon fulfillment business like that.
What is it? I don't even know what it is.
There's this whole thing, just like YouTube, this YouTube millionaire, like those guys driving around in Lamborghinis and big houses, that have 1 million or 2 million views on YouTube. They make like $200 a month on YouTube, by the way. And they're renting all that shit so they can look fancy on YouTube, and none of it is theirs. And then they're selling like these programs about learn how to do what I did in e-commerce or drop shipping and make passive income by doing it. I mean, it's total fucking nonsense.
That sounds like a pyramid scheme.
Well, there's plenty of guys that are out there that are selling these they're selling it as a program. Follow my program and you can do it too. My program is only $1,500 a month or whatever, or $1,500, and I'll show you how to do what I did, and take a look at my Lamborghini and my big house.
Yeah. What's that? That's like a affiliate. What's affiliate marketing? Is that what?
It's in that category.
Okay. But
I think that they put this notion out there that says that, hey, working hard and going to work and earning and getting a skill and doing that for your whole life, that's what the idiots do. Right? Don't be an idiot. Do it the way that I did, which is put hardly any work in it at all and just get the money for nothing. I mean, 1, it's not possible. 2, if that happens, guess what? You don't value what you're doing. And 3, you don't even value the money because it came too easily. So, there's a bunch of flaws with that whole thing, but I think that it did spark this era of thinking that says, just like you mentioned, which is, well, what's the easy way to do this instead of the hard way to do it? Because, in my opinion, whenever there was anything I wanted, I never once thought about how hard it was going to be. I never thought about, I want to start my own business, or I want to do this and I want to do that. And I never thought about, it's going to be hard though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you just fucking do it.
It just
because
is.
that's right. Because if there's something that you feel like you want bad enough, it doesn't matter how hard it is because you're going to get through it. But I think that even the consideration of like, well, I could do this, but what's the easiest way to get to the result that I want? That I think that there's that shift in YouTube that has convinced people that not only does that easy way exist, but if you try any other way, you're the dummy. So I agree in that sense that people have adopted this kind of this weird sense. Maybe Trump is a part of that too. That says,
I'm sure.
Because he had this seemingly huge financial windfall with what has largely been, to most people, I think, a completely obscure and unknown business practice. And I'm not sure if anybody can say that, the guy has worked hard. Who can
he's
really
taken
say?
a lot of risk, right? You can't look. I know the real estate business well, and I understand like the stuff that he pulled off. It doesn't matter how much your dad is worth. To build a fucking tower in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue is not an easy feat. That is no small feat, right? To renovate a hotel on top of Grand Central, to understand, I worked on, when I was at Lehman Brothers, we had a loan on the air rights over Grand Central, which were, to say they were fucking obscure is like the understatement of a century. The air rights traveled up the rail line all the way up through Connecticut, right? There was these weird abilities to transfer them. And I've renovated buildings, historic buildings. I've built ground up. That is no small feat. I don't care. It doesn't matter what you think about the president. That is not an easy path along the way. Right. And then to do that, and then to realize that and go bankrupt doing it and growing and continue doing it, you have to have some level of respect for a human that can do that.
For sure.
Come back from that stuff. But I think more importantly, going back to your point about work, for me, there was a point where things started to change around it. And it was when my son was born. I started my company when Max was a month old. And I was at this threshold of like, I got to do this now. I got to start now. There is no good time to start a company, right? To walk off the plank, which is what it feels like. There's fucking no good time. There's never, if the universe lines up for you where like the capital's there, the business plan is there, the money's there, whatever, take that opportunity. If that happens, take it. That's like having a fish on the line that's just going to feed your family for a month and, saying, I'll catch it tomorrow. You take that. Right. And my journey didn't line up that way, but it was like, it's a line in the sand. I remember the conversation with my wife where I was like, I'm ready to do this, but I want you to be on board with this. And I know, we have a 1 month old, which is a big factor because I'm going from decent income to zero income and zero guarantees. And she looked at me and was like, if you don't do it now, I know you're always going to question if you could do it. And I was like, from there, I was like, okay, game on. I'm curious about yours because I think you also made a transition.
It wasn't that early. It took a little while because when Anissa was born, which is almost 5 years ago now, I was still in a corporate transition from working at one giant company to another giant company. And I was kind of like at the mid-executive level, right? So I kind of reported into the senior vice president layer. So at a company of that size, that would mean that, at any given time, there's, something like 100 people in my umbrella. And that, that gives you a sense of belonging, that this is where I belong and this is what I'm doing because my career has advanced to this point and now this is who I am. So when Anissa was born, I didn't really think about, maybe I should start my own company. I was firmly set in, I should just go back and find another job doing what I was doing, which I ended up doing. But then you're on the road and you're traveling, and you're thinking about your family at home, and then after 20 years of it, you're kind of like, you start thinking about, well, what is the point of this? And what is it that you really want to be doing? And how do you want to be spending your time, instead of, this is what I'm doing so I get to do what I want with my actual time? And I just got convinced that there has to be a better way, right? To be able to do what you want, make the money that you want, and spend the time the way that you want, instead of saying that, oh, I do work, and work is the thing that allows me to do the other things that I want to do. And that's how everybody was telling me that it's supposed to work, is that, oh, work is supposed to be work, because work is the thing that gives you the resources for you to then do what you want to do. And I was like, and you can't put those two things together. You can't, and I just am not convinced of that even to this day. I'm not convinced that you can't have it all. Yeah. I think you can have it all. I think you could do what you want, spend the time that you want, make the money that you want, set the example for your kids the way that you want. And I think you can do all of it. And so I just got convinced that I wanted more, and that there was no way I was going to get that at a company. And the right move is that at some point, and at that point I had a lot of cash sitting around, and I said, I'm going to use that to get into business on my own. And I didn't know what or how at that time, but I knew that it started with me taking that leap. So, and a big part of that was, what's the example that I want to set? Does Anissa get to grow up thinking that Daddy just does this thing that he, whether he likes it or not is not even important. He just does it so we can buy stuff. Totally. Which is that's an example that I wanted to steer away from, and say that, hey, I want to at least set the example that it's okay to try at something, even if it doesn't go your way. And because if that happens, then we'll still have options. At the very least, we'll be together. But then, at that time, I think it's a courageous thing to do when you're like damn near 40 years old, to walk out of corporate life and then try to start a company. And that too, especially when you have kids on board that are depending on you on some level. But to be able to say that, hey, I think it's important to set that example, or be able to tell that story of the courage that it does take in order to do that. And that you shouldn't feel like you're trapped in some kind of corporate environment because you have dependencies that you feel like you can't get out of. So we radically downsized, to where, our entire lifestyle at one point was downsized to the point where, to just more than what my car payment was before, and at one point I was paying about $3,500 a month to maintain my cars. So,
dude, that's a lot of fucking dough.
Yeah, I mean, those cars are expensive.
Yeah.
So,
what was it? Just like insurance, garage, like parking, maintenance?
It was insurance. Yeah. So I had a 1988 BMW M5 that took about $3,000 a year. I owned that car. There's insurance on that car. A 1972 Chevrolet C10 that I still own. I had a Bentley Continental GT, I had a Ferrari, and I had a Tesla, the big dog ludicrous car. Uh-huh. And so, just the payments and the maintenance on the Tesla alone was a couple $1,000.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
It's like a $1,400 a month payment and $200-300 of insurance, and the thing would just like rip through tires every couple of months because it has damn near 1,000 horsepower. But and the other cars weren't any better, frankly. And then every time you take the Ferrari out, like one little fucking ding on it is $1,500. So, and maybe I'm really downplaying it, but eventually it's just like I don't need any of this stuff because it was me. It was the identity that I had built in this corporate environment of who I was and who I was supposed to be. Abandoning all that was kind of actually liberating in a lot of ways. And getting down to the nitty gritty of what do I really want to do? I mean, how do I really want to spend my time? Do I care about driving around and showing off to other people? Because at that time, we just got into this mode of we want to be together and spend time together as a family. Everything was in the way. All this stuff that I had, the job, all of this stuff was just in the way. So it really took an entire re-architecture of our life. And that, prompted by Anissa being born, that led us into setting a new set of priorities and then restructuring our life and building a company around that. And now, in the kind of category that we ended up with is an exact example of that, because we're in the kids consumer space, because it allows all of us to kind of run the business together. And so those are all the catalysts of that. And it was a journey, man, a couple of years probably before we got to a point where now this is kind of what we're doing instead of being in that sort of corporate environment. So the transition back to work was bumpy. I mean, I did go back to work and work at a giant, very famous company here in the Bay Area. But it was almost immediate, like how dissatisfied I was in that process, and the stuff wasn't really doing it anymore. It's just not how we wanted to spend our time. And, and so that it came slowly, but it did come.
Yeah. Man, I resonate with that so much in different, like everyone's journey is different. It really boils down to like, how am I spending my energy? Translation, your time, right? What are you putting your energy into? And when you have a family, at some point there's a reckoning. Mine was kind of immediate where I saw it. And I think one thing that I've learned is that it's okay to have chapters in your life. It's okay to close things out. And what you're talking about around identity is that we get so fixated, even the stuff that I had built, you get so fixated with this is who I am. And it takes time to process the sort of de-identification with that persona. And once you do that, it's totally liberating, and you're okay with the chapters. You're okay with this may be the next thing. It's funny for me to conversate with Max, because he grew up going to the construction site with me on Saturdays. And anytime he hears any word around financial stuff, he's like, "Hey, Pop, what? Are we building another building?" I'm like, "Not right now, bud. Definitely not right now. Maybe never, but not right now. We're gonna use our energy to be a little smarter, Yeah. And it doesn't mean we're not gonna, it doesn't mean we're not gonna do things in the real estate space. It just means we're gonna take those lessons and transform them, And I love doing this. I love having conversations. I'm pounding out this book right now, and that's okay. It's okay to go test these things. I think it's just, there's some barrier in society around taking that risk where people have made it such a big thing. And it's really not. It's a natural part of life's journey in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and if you're building, if you're using an analogy, like your career is like building a house. In the first few years, you lay the foundation, and then you build a room, and you keep adding rooms onto it as you kind of advance in your career. It's completely okay to say, I'm going to switch and I'm going to start building another house now, and that old house doesn't go anywhere. Right? It's not like you tear it down, right? That's a part of the past, and it stays there. And if you're going to build another house, the toughest part is you're so used to living in this big house that then you have to leave that house and start building another foundation. And that's, I think, the toughest part of that transition is that basically you're kind of homeless for that period of time when you used to be living in this big fancy house. Now you're homeless laying bricks again. Trying to build the foundation of what is a new career that's not related to the old house. And that's a painful exercise to have to do, especially if you have not laid bricks in damn near 20 years. So a part of it is of course it's the identity. I'm not this guy that lives in this big house anymore. But also the just the muscle memory of saying that, okay, now we're back at square one, and and I will get another big house. And it has to be a stepwise thing of first, let's lay the bricks. And this time, from the experience of the first house, I could probably do it a lot faster and a lot better, because of the experience the first time we had around it. But it still kind of has to go in order. You can't put a roof on it first. So right now, we're still kind of in bricklaying mode, but I really feel like that's where we're setting up. In both of our cases, is setting up the foundation for what the second half of our career looks like, that in some cases will be adjacent to the original one. It's totally like having a house on the same property, and it will definitely in many ways maybe even connected to the original career. But it's starting with laying a new foundation down for the second half of our career, that it is in a kind of a wildly different category.
Yeah. It's, I think once you get comfortable with that, then each transition becomes easier as well. It becomes easier to let go of certain things when as soon as you recognize that they're not serving a purpose in your life or a purpose that you want in your life, it becomes, at least for me, it's become much easier to just let go of things and just be like, oh, that's not working, or that doesn't have a place in here. I'm going to close out that chapter in this space. I'm going to close out. I mean, in every aspect of life, like we were talking about it in physical training, where you were talking about doing some cleans before we started recording. And I'm like, that is unfathomable to me to even be able to lift that. But you're entering this new chapter in that space where you're kind of coming back to that heavier, intense physical training at 42 years old, right? For anybody who doesn't know, AJ is a fucking beast when it comes to moving weight in a way that I've never seen in person. I've only seen it on videos. It's incredible. And I'm in the space where I'm like, I'm going to take a break. I've been training real hard. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and I'm okay with it. And I used to never be able to shut that off. And I'd be like, you know what? Fuck it. Train anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And even at being 42, it doesn't really feel like it. It still feels very much like in my mid 30s. And, some of that is physical, right? And, just to piggyback on your, thanks for the props there. 'Cause last week on Thursday, I turned 42 and hit a 115 kilo clean, which is I'm happy with that. I think I could definitely hit 125.
What's that in pounds, by the way?
275 pounds, which 275 would be pretty good for a high school football running back these days. But as a 42-year-old guy that was running two companies with two kids, that's living in the suburbs, pushing a 300-pound clean, by the time I get to 45, if I'm at anywhere near a 300-pound clean and still got an okay amount of work capacity, I might really think about competing in this whole CrossFit thing. So, because I've put some thought into that, I think I could be competitive in the masters category. Those guys are still, man, they're incredible athletes at every level. So it would require, a dedicated, purposeful training to get there. But to me, it's all about the first 20 years, the first half of my career, really from 20 to 40 or 20 to 35. It's like things were just kind of happening and I was along for the ride. And now from 40 to, it feels like I'm in the driver's seat and I can architect the things that I want and design it the way that I want. And so that's a little bit of a different feeling, because when I was 28, I just was, even career or otherwise, things were just happening. Mm-hmm. And and some of the stuff I liked, some of the stuff I didn't like. Most of that time I had feelings I didn't like. because I wasn't really in control of my mind or my thought, my actions, and my actions, of course, but not my feelings. And now at 40, I'm like, I can design all of that stuff. I can design how the life that I want and the financial success that I want, the kind of body that I want, and all of that is up to me, and I can design it. And then once you design it, you can turn it into reality. So that's kind of what we're kind of in, like architecture mode, drawing it out.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty happy about that, because that becomes exciting when you think about, let's 42. What do I want to do when I'm 45? What do I want to do when we're 48? And I'm pretty confident that whatever we think of, and that's that's kind of the beauty about getting older, is that you become a lot more clear about the things that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start thinking about that, you're pretty clear on how to build the path to get there.
Totally. Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I'm not 42. I'm not quite that old.
Not far though. I mean, it'll creep on you fast.
It does. Look, I'm with you, man. I'm in the best physical shape that I've been in since I was a kid, and I don't feel I've got, some uncomfortable little injuries that I'm constantly tuning, that I'm convinced that I'm very close to just moving past that and balancing out my body. And I think a lot of it was from just fucking not working out and sitting at a desk. And, that's
like that neck thing you were mentioning.
Yeah. It's it was like brought on by jujitsu, I think, but I've felt that the pain that I'm experiencing is like, I've felt that for years before I even started training jujitsu. So it just at random times, it just never flared up that way. Jiu-jitsu tends to do that because of the intensity of it. Right.
Did you get did it come, was there like a day, did you get locked up or something, and then your neck never felt right after that?
I don't really recall. I definitely had a few guillotines that I should have fucking tapped on way earlier. Right. That'll do it. Which is like
who are you fighting with now? Like, is it just?
I'm not. I mean,
not really.
There's nothing's open out here. And so I train with Max, right? Which obviously he's very small, and I have to be super cautious of making sure, even in a roll scenario or a transition, to not injure him. But that also has made it. I was explaining to Professor Fabio. I was like, that has really taught me a lot about the basics of jiu-jitsu. The basics of the movement in jiu-jitsu, and understanding not needing to use power, use leverage and those things, and just having to teach a little bit, right? Because I'm teaching him. It's been a really beautiful experience. I've talked about it a lot, I think, and I really love it. It's I was asking Max last night, because we're reading Jocko's kids book, The Warrior Kid. That's what we're reading right now, which is pretty good. It's a great book. Shout out to Jocko on that, because it's young boys tend to resonate with it. Yeah. And he's got some sections in there about jiu-jitsu. And I was like, man, I love jiu-jitsu. And Maxime was like, yeah, me too. And I was like, what do you love about it? He's like, well, I tap you like every time we wrestle. And I'm like, dude, you crack me up, bro. It's which is true. We play a game. We usually play for like an extra scoop of ice cream on dessert night. We play like most taps wins, right?
Yeah. And you got to lock him up every once in a while. Keep that ego in check.
Oh, dude, yeah. I do. Trust me. He gets talking at the dinner table. I'm like, yeah, but what's the one thing I always catch you in? And he's like, arm bar. I'm like, yeah, why is that? He's
so
like,
that's your thing. You're like closing with the arm bar.
It's just I'm just taking what he gives, he extends his arms out and leaves them there for a period of time. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, you have to limit what you can do on a small kid. I'm very, very cautious about it.
What's his thing? Like, what's his big closer? Does he always find something?
Yeah, so his move, his signature move, according to him, was the Americana, and from the mount. And so what I taught him is that when someone is stronger than you, you have to transition. But usually when you've got one arm trapped, there's something else. And so he's been transitioning that into an arm bar a lot. Okay. And he's doing it like it's getting fat. The first couple times it was like awkward, and now he's like, boom. But I watched Gracie University which is like Henner Gracie and his brother. They have a kids program, and they have a primer on there that's like why kids quit jujitsu that I watched before I started teaching him. Cause I was like, I'm a white belt with 3 stripes. I don't know anything about teaching jujitsu. You know, I was feeling like I needed some input, and they were great about it. They're like, look, the number one reason why kids quit jujitsu is because they're not having fun. So just make it fun. They're like, we don't care if the kid gets the technique wrong or whatever. This is about developing a passion for the sport and the self-defense. And if you make it fun, which is like what I watched that and I was like, I get it. Don't try to be like, hey, you got to adjust your hips here. Just never criticize him. Let him show him.
I'll tell you what happened. When I was in middle school, I had a teacher, Mr. Phillips, and he was a college wrestler. And I started to think about wrestling a little bit because I had one of the older kids in the neighborhood was a Roman Greco wrestler, and I just was fascinated with it. This was like in the early days of UFC, like UFC 1, UFC 2 kind of days. And so wrestling was like the big combat sport at that time for kids. And I talked to Mr. Phillips when he talked about wrestling, and I asked him why he gave it up. And he said, something about just rolling around on the mat with another sweaty dude didn't sit well with me, so I stopped. And now, 30 years later, that, for some reason that still stuck with me. But even after that, I didn't touch the mat for several years because of one guy's homophobia, So it's like, that little statements like that, man, impact kids at these profound levels. And I'm not sure, Mr. Phillips was a great teacher. I can't criticize him for just having such a benign statement, and who knew what kind of impact it would be on me. But then I started to think, very similarly, until I really started to think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it became a lot more popular. And that of course is a different story. But are you guys fighting with gis, or are you guys just rolling around with with sportswear?
The gi.
Yeah, you guys are
always the gi. Yeah, I feel like for the Gracie University, you can do gi or no gi, and a lot of the basics of the movements are set up for both. I feel from our standpoint, there's something about putting on that uniform, especially, he got his gray belt at Renzo Gracie in New York, which was he slept with his gray belt for like 2 days. Yeah. like legitimately slept with it like a stuffed animal. And I think like suiting up is just kind of a way for him to transition from playing with his friends in the afternoon or coming home from school or whatever. It's the right thing to do. And I feel the same way. It's like I put that on. I'm like, okay, it's teacher mode.
Sure.
Right now.
Yeah. You got a spare one when I get down there?
We do. I don't know if it'll fit you, but you're a big dude. Yeah. I can talk to the guys here. Hopefully it's open. I hope they make it. I can talk to them here and see. I mean, I'm sure we could just go in and roll around. I think you're a blue belt, right?
From a long time ago, there was a Machado school, in Texas. And, but yeah, those are a long time ago, but, I haven't, just kind of sparred on the ground with anybody in over 10 years. That's why I kind of want to just do it and see where things are at. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll be amazing. Yeah. I haven't sparred since I left New York. So it's, I think who the fuck knows what's going to happen? I really don't know. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm like, at some point I have to decide to just get mats throughout my garage and not use it for my car. Right. So that I can have, because right now we just have two small ones.
What is in the garage? Do you guys have sports mats down?
Yeah, we have a I just found two, one. I talked to Fuji mats, and it would, if we're renting right now. If we were buying, I would have done something with Fuji mats, but just to get them out to the island is the cost of the mats.
Yeah, the mats aren't cheap.
No, they're not cheap. I found some on Amazon that work great, super cheap, super durable. It goes on a concrete floor. They're easy, they work for what we're doing, right? And like teaching an 8-year-old.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to get the mats, I guess, if you're going to practice like throws and takedowns and stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that on the mats that we have.
Right.
I think it would be real dangerous.
You can go out to the sand for that stuff though.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, you definitely can. And look, I'm hopeful that things will open up. I mean, there's, again, just full circle on this. There's like weird rules where like the gyms were open for a while, but the beach was closed. Now the beach is open, but the gyms are closed, right? It just, it fucking doesn't make any sense to, I have no idea what, we're on the second shutdown, and I'm not convinced that there's not going to be a third or a fourth, because I think travel's opening up and there's supposedly some strict measures here for people to even get on a plane. You have to produce a test. But I don't know, man. It's, I feel like the world post November, whatever election day is going to be very different than what it is today.
I 100% agree. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but of course, I'm in the same boat as you. I think the more that we can get people to resume some sense of normal life, the better off we are. But that has to be done with a degree of precaution to where, that we don't deal with this thing on some kind of permanent basis as like a new burden of life. Yeah. So, because it already may be that COVID management might be a new component of our global healthcare system, which is that every year you'll have to get a vaccine just like the flu, and that that it might be in some cases far more than just a cardiopulmonary a viral situation, that it could exist in the muscle tissue or the liver. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of data about mortality of survivors that is still unknown. Like people who have survived. None of those statistics are really known yet. It's only really what the death rate looks like for somebody who becomes infected. But some of this other stuff, it has yet to reveal itself as well as the efficacy of any kind of vaccine that might come out over the course of this year and next year. So, it's going to be unknown. So, in some cases, you just got to pull the Band-Aid off, create some kind of system to where everything can be managed. Otherwise, because that at least gives, it reduces the secondary negative impacts, like businesses going bankrupt and people not being able to put food on their table or work, or kids can't go to school. I mean, there's tons of secondary impacts that'll happen as the longer we keep going out there. But there's some balance and middle ground of this that I don't think has been found yet. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the election is going to change any of that, but hopefully we'll find that balance sooner or later, so we're not completely constrained by the virus, but we have some kind of social management under control where people can resume life. Because it looks like one thing that's starting to look pretty clear is that I don't think we're going to be out of the COVID woods for a while.
Like years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with even when a vaccine comes out, it will be a yearly thing with unknown rates of how effective it is, and plus long-term impacts of people who have gotten infected and have survived are unknown. When we're hoping, people I think are hoping for optimism on those levels, but it is so unclear. But in that sense, it doesn't matter if you open now or if you open a year from now.
Totally.
It's just kind of one of those things where you just open, because the rules are going to be the rules, and those are the new rules for the foreseeable future. So let's just, it's hard to say where those lines cross to where the balance is, but I know that things are going to continue to get worse for everybody. The more that we shut down, and hopefully there's a way to test and vaccine and mask and distance to where we can respectively have an open society, but still keep infection rate low. And I don't know what that looks like, but hopefully we'll get there before the election.
Yeah, I don't think that's even possible. Right.
Yeah.
Just given how, I mean, we're like a month out at this point, less than a month out. And look, I'm to your earlier point of architecting and designing your life. I'm building an overland expedition truck with my uncle for a fraction of the price that you can buy it on the open market for. And that vehicle I'm designing to have an extra bunk in case we have more kids. And it's part of it. Why I'm interested in it is even if the economy's open, I want the ability to be able to just take off if things get and live and truly live. If there's another pandemic scenario, I don't want to be cooped up in a city or a town in that scenario. It doesn't mean we won't settle somewhere, but I'm actively designing that vehicle for overland travel. And I think the other component is you got to live life. You know what I mean? It's going to you better factor it into your career life as well on what it means. You know, there's going to be some big swinging changes that I don't even think have started. I don't think people can even start to process it on a commercial level where this is going to change. I really believe it's going to change the nature of work. I think it's going to trigger a universal basic income regardless of party that's in power. I think this is going to have to be addressed.
That'd be interesting for our next conversation because I agree. I think all the things from like dating and relationships to entertainment to live event venues to workplace relationships. I mean, all of that stuff is up for discussion about not just how or if it will survive, but fundamentally, like, do people even give a shit about it? So, I think it's going to be interesting. Like, there's a lot of unknowns. Like all the way from like secondary, like economies that were non-existent that are blowing up now, like sex robots. And I'm not kidding because like, how the hell are you supposed to date? You know what I mean? There's some stupid thing I saw the other day where somebody recommended that you should fuck with with your masks on. I'm like, get out of here, dude. Like, I mean, if people are subject to this when they're trying to date, like people are going to be single for a while.
Yeah.
So, I feel bad for kids that are single, living by themselves in this environment right now. Man, that shit's got to be painful. Can't go to a restaurant, can't go to a bar, can't date, can't meet anybody, can't fuck. Man. So we should talk about that.
I guess it's time to look within. I guess it's time to look within.
Yeah, I mean, who's got the tools and resources to even consider that? Is because all they do is they log into the news. They see one thing, and then they log into YouTube and they see like guys driving around in Lamborghinis,
Yeah.
And and so it's just all set up to feel inadequate, not to think about how to be fulfilled with what you already have.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm hopeful that conversations like ours point people in the direction of like, you have a choice. You don't have to pick up that. I don't read the news in any regular frequency.
Definitely. Likewise.
I usually hear something from my neighbors or somebody that I'm talking to. And if it's something that I feel is important enough to research, then I'll go look for some basic information around it.
Yeah, news is like the new porn, Like you want to be successful in your relationship, stop watching porn.
Totally.
And you want to be successful like at just about everything else, stop watching the news. It's like just that dopamine hit that people like crave, just like porn, or it's just like, you just get it and like you consume it and you kind of feel better from that 5 seconds or 10 seconds because it's just like watching a train wreck.
Yeah.
But it it just slowly fucks with your mind to where you end up being a little bit more anxious and insecure at the end of the day. Just like porn will fuck up all your relationships with that you're trying to build. News will just screw up your whole outward mentality, outward look on what's happening.
Totally. I think that's a good place to wrap episode number 2. Yeah.
Sweet. Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Let's touch base on what December looks like, and then we'll put a plan together to talk about UBI and what's happening with this this crazy election cycle next time.
100%, dude. Love you.
Thanks,
man.
brother.
This was great.
Talk soon.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.